think I will go ahead, even though we're still missing a couple of people. I'll go ahead and get started. And it's my pleasure to introduce you all to the wonderful Amy Pfrimmer. Amy's a wonderful soprano. She and I go way back, way back to Louisiana days, singing together at what was it, Holy Name of Jesus Church? Yeah, and then also later on, we also sang together at Chautauqua Opera in upstate New York, and we were just talking about reminiscing about our time there with a fellow colleague who sings in Berlin now, wonderful tenor there.
And we share a voice teacher. Philip Frohnmeyer was both of our teachers.
Yes, teacher and mentor to me, just an incredible human being who we lost. Was it 7 years now, or about 7 years ago? We lost our beloved mentor Phil Frohnmeyer, who I wish all of you could have known him because he was really something else. They broke the mold for sure, Absolutely. So just give you just a couple of little bits of Amy's bio, just so y'all can know a little bit about her. Known for her dramatic and vocal versatility, soprano Amy Pfrimmer has sung across the U.S., Europe, and Canada, and is a 2019 winner of the American Prize Chicago Oratorio Award. Notable engagements include appearances with the London Symphony Orchestra, Staatsphilharmonie, Rheinland-Pfalz, Baltimore Choral Arts, Montreal Opera, of course New Orleans Opera, her home opera company, Bulgarian State Opera, and the list goes on. She has performed roles like Merry Widow, Violetta, Mimi, Musetta, Cho-Cho-san, Nedda, and the mother in Amal and the Night Visitors, and lots of concert credits as well. Wonderful soprano, and she has made this neglected repertoire a bit of a specialty, and so we are really excited to hear about this, to hear about Louise Reichardt, and also, of course, the songs of César Franck, which will be a great segue to our discussion of a French song. So why don't we turn it over? I'm going to pin Amy's video, but she's screen sharing anyway, so it may not be such an issue, but I will turn my video off and turn it over to her. Thank you, Amy.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to get right into it. You are listening to an excerpt of Frühlingsblume, which is just one of the sweet lyrical melodies created by composer Louise Reichardt. Welcome, everyone, and thanks to Pacific Lutheran and Professor James Brown for inviting me to share my research about composers Louise Reichardt and César Franck. I'm Amy Pfrimmer, Associate Professor of Music from Tulane University in New Orleans. To give you an idea of today's format, I'm going to give two very fast mini lectures, the first on Reichardt and the second on Franck. Then hopefully we'll have time for a brief Q&A. As you'll see, it's my mission to bring attention to composers whose music needs to be more widely known and explored. Once again, welcome and thanks so much for being here. When we think about the role of women in music around 1800, the title of composer is rare. Take a look at these quotations by Clara Wieck Schumann and Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel. I once believed I possessed creative talent, but have given up this idea. A woman must not desire to compose. There has never been one to do it. Should I expect to be the one? And it must be a sign of talent that I do not give up, though I can get nobody to take an interest in my efforts. Even Clara Wieck Schumann and Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel, those we now know as great composers, doubted themselves and their abilities to get traction with their compositions. During the 19th century, even the most competent women were entirely discouraged from the serious study of music, from composing, and from making music publicly. On the other hand, it was considered socially acceptable for women to make music at home and to compose songs because the simple form of the genre was seen as uncomplex and non-competitive with the more advanced and studied symphonic and sonata forms that made up the, quote, men's domain. Luckily, the songs of a great many women were published throughout the 19th century, including those of Louise Reichardt. First, I'd like to give you some background information about composer Louise Reichardt and discuss why we know her work. She was a German composer who was born in Berlin and died in Hamburg. Reichardt was an influential musical figure associated with the German Romantic movement. She composed more than 90 songs and choruses that were all published during her lifetime. Also, Louisa was the daughter of a musical family, about which I'll tell you more, and she was renowned as a private teacher of piano and voice. We also know that she gained attention from her compositions because of her activity in the choral life of Hamburg. So if she was such a big deal, then why don't we know Reichardt's songs? Simply put, one reason is that until recently, the musical canon wasn't inclusive of the music of women. The big deal is that through her musical and personal uniqueness, Louisa was an active, self-supporting Romantic era composer who happened to be a woman. She defied gender limitations of the time as a professional musician and published composer. Through her work, Louisa may have helped pave the way for the inclusion of later women with more sophisticated compositional styles. I've just earlier mentioned Clara Wieck Schumann and Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel, but there are countless others, such as Josephine Lang. Reichardt's modest demeanor allowed her to gain publication without seeming a threat to her male counterpart musicians. Louisa Reichardt received no formal musical or other education, but certainly absorbed much in the Reichardt household. Her mother, Juliane, a keyboard player and composer, was one of several talented daughters of Franz Benda, concert master to the court of Frederick the Great. Her paternal grandfather, Johann Reichardt, was a court musician, and Louisa's father, Johann Friedrich Reichardt, was Kapellmeister at the same court and a composer, conductor, and writer who encouraged his daughter in her musical interests, truly mentoring her, but offering her no formal training in composition. The earliest printed songs by Louisa Reichardt appeared in a joint collection with her father, published in 1800. Goethe called Reichardt's family home die Herberge der Romantik, the sheltering place of Romanticism, and the Herberge became a meeting place between 1791 and 1814 to which scientific and literary celebrities such as Goethe, Brentano, and von Arnim flocked. Even without a formal musical education, Louisa was sort of musically and otherwise homeschooled in a home full of intellectual and literary discussion. Concerts in the style of the Schubertiade were often given in the Reichardt home by the Reichardt family, friends, and guests. When composing, Louisa Reichardt followed the contemporary trend of famous composers in setting texts by the most talented contemporary writers. The Reichardts entertained the exchange of works and ideas by such contemporary leading poets, philosophers, and writers as Johann Wolfgang Goethe, Friedrich von Schiller, Joseph von Eichendorff, Johann Ludwig Tieck, Clemens Brentano, Aachen von Arnim, Novalis, Wilhelm Grimm of the Brothers Grimm, and others who became her friends and inspirations. And here's a little gossip about Louisa. Her love of the arts and poetry extended to her romantic life. She was twice engaged, first to a poet and second to a painter, but both fiancés died tragically before they could ever marry. For the rest of her life, Reichardt avoided romantic relationships and devoted her energy to her students and compositions. As I mentioned, Louisa's access to continuous musical stimulation and critical thinking about music, literature, and philosophy resulted from her father's friendships and position as Kapellmeister and court composer of Frederick the Great. Salon-style concerts were frequently given and appreciated at the court. Because of this, whoops, I just went too far, guys. Sorry. There we go. I clicked too many. Because of this, the Reichardts enjoyed a good life and high social standing for a time. In 1794, political outspokenness and his negative writing caused Johann Friedrich Reichardt to be dismissed without a pension from his court position. That, along with the family's general difficulties during the Napoleonic occupation of Prussia from 1806 to 1815, brought complex financial difficulties to the family, including the temporary loss of their home. In 1810, after the death of her second fiance, Louisa left her family and decided to strike out for Hamburg, where she quickly acquired a sizable studio of voice and piano students. Most of her songs were composed in Hamburg, which may suggest that through her independence there, she felt freer creatively to compose than she had with her family. She never returned home after she moved to Hamburg and rarely left the city, even to travel. Louisa began studying with Johann Friedrich Klesing to further her musical education, and she became extremely interested in the choral works of Handel. For the advantage of her voice students, Louisa organized the Hamburg Gesangverein, a women's choral group for which she taught singers music and German diction, and she coached them on Handel's style. She also translated multiple Latin texts to German for performances. Despite her tremendous influence on the women's choral group she formed, Louisa conducted it only in rehearsal and never in performance. Conducting remained the realm of her male colleagues, usually Klesing, as there was no precedent for a woman to conduct a chorus in public at that time, and also because Reichardt simply didn't enjoy being the center of attention. I want to describe a number of musical characteristics of Reichardt's songs and also play some pieces for you. More than 70 of her songs are among the very best of the Volksstimmlich, or folk-like style popularized by the Romantic poets. The leader exhibit influences of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Franz Schubert, her contemporary. Schubert's compositional style, in turn, was influenced by Reichardt's own father. The Italian songs also exhibit the influences of bel canto song and operatic style. Most of the solo songs were written for voice with piano or guitar accompaniment, and most were composed between 1809 and 1826. The songs are not harmonically or rhythmically complicated, nor particularly harmonically adventurous. They are simply beautiful melodies set to high-quality texts. Typical themes come from German Romanticism, highlighting nature, romantic love, and death, always remaining extremely faithful to the text. Her songs demonstrate an unforgettable melodic gift and were beloved by generations of Germans who sang them in the belief that they were folk songs. Before we go further, I want to play another example of Louisa's music so you can have a sense of what I'm talking about. This piece, Ruhe süß Liebchen im Schatten, is a 3-verse modified strophic setting with Louisa's own simple ornaments in the last verse. For time's sake, I'll play just one verse.
Ruhe süß Liebchen im Schatten, der grünen dämmert Nacht. Es säuselt das Gras auf den Matten, es pfeffelt ein Gedicht der Schatten und treue Liebe wacht. Schlafe, schlaf ein, leise rauschet der Hain, ewig bin ich dein. Schweigt
As you just heard and will hear, some basic characteristics of Reichardt's compositions include understated supportive accompaniments that never overshadow the voice or immediacy of the text. The voice is rarely doubled in the accompaniment, and piano parts generally serve as support for the voice. The harmonies are diatonic and the phrases are regular. Usually the songs have modest mid-range vocal lines, simple harmonies, and 2 to 4 bar phrases in which the focus lies on the vocal melody line. Generally, the songs are short and they are often strophic. The songs rarely have introductions or postludes, and interludes are generally not more than 1 or 2 measures. The songs offer simple ornamentation, if any. Pianistically speaking, the songs require an easy handspan that demands control by the player, and the pieces are praised for their sweet lyrical melodies that unite expressive melodic text setting and demanding legato line. Next, I'll play a short piece on Maria with text by Novalis. Listen for the influences of Schubert and Mozart. You'll hear short phrasing, modest vocal range, understated supportive accompaniment, and expressive melody-enhanced text setting.
Ich sehe dich in 1000 Bildern, Maria lieblich ausgedrückt, doch keins von allen kann dich schildern, wie meine Seele dich erblickt. Ich weiß nur, dass der Welt Getümmel seitdem wie ein Traum verweht und ein unendbar süßer Himmel mir ewig im Gemüte steht.
Moving on to Reichardt's Metastasio songs, I've listed in the slide the Sei Canzone and other Metastasio songs. And of course, you'll all be familiar with this Italian poet and librettist who was considered the most important writer of opera seria libretti. It's important to note that though the Sei Canzone are grouped as a set, the songs are not linked except by Metastasio as the poet. As I said earlier, Reichardt's music is not particularly harmonically complicated or adventurous and is characterized by its folk-like qualities. Her music was so accessible and pleasant to listen to, and it was widely appreciated by the public in her time. This gave Louise the freedom to write beautiful melodies set to high-quality texts, which helps define her compositional style and musical contribution. Like the leader, Reichardt's Metastasio songs are evocative of Franz Schubert. She often sets a simple melody over sparse diatonic accompaniment. Some songs nod to bel canto style as they are ornamented with cadenzas and are occasionally operatic in nature. The Italian songs also tend to be more dramatic in nature and are more pianistically challenging than Reichardt's leader. And also, there's the occasional use of German and Italian sixth chords. I'm including an excerpt here from the song Fra un dolce deliro as yet another example of Reichartt's melodic creativity. The piece is in modified strophic form with delicate embellishments in verse 2. There's also a brief piano postlude, and again, Reichartt's music and ornamentation invoke the style of bel canto composers. I'll play one verse. Oops, sorry, I cut that one off a little early, but I'm going to move on. The last piece I'd like to play is Heimweh, yet another example of Reichartt's melodic creativity. The piece is Reichartt's most famous solo song and the most recorded. The song is alternately known as Hoffnung and in English as When the Roses Bloom and Hope. The song was especially popular at the beginning of the 20th century. It was reprinted in numerous collections and as single sheets, and was recorded for the Victor Talking Machine Company by such singers as Louise Homer and Ernestina Schumann-Heink. Here's the second verse.
Wenn die Rosen blühen, matt gequältes Herz, freudig wird sehen, dann wohl himmelwärts, ewig dann genesen, wirst du neue Glühen, wirst ein himmlisch Wesen, wenn die Rosen blühen.
I want to leave you with a list of my favorite Reichardt songs and point out that Reichardt's music is accessible, easy to listen to, and characterized by its folk-like qualities. Her songs include beautiful melodies set to high-quality texts, many of which were written by her friends and contemporaries. And her music was published in her lifetime and appreciated by the public, enabling her to support herself. In closing, I want to emphasize that Louisa was an undeniable influence on the 19th century musical culture of Hamburg. And considering both Reichardt's musical contributions, as well as her stature as a leader in the Hamburg musical community, I advocate that her songs remain a beautiful and important part of song history. Okay, I know we're short on time, so I'm going to just blow right into César Franck. So here we go. First, I'd like to briefly give you some information about César Franck and discuss why we know his work. Franck was born in Belgium in 1822. The Franck family emigrated to France for what his father hoped would be the start to César's lucrative career as a concert pianist. Of course, the reason he's best known is that he was a brilliant composer of organ music, and he became well known in his position as the titular organist of Sainte Clotilde Basilica in Paris. Because of his skill as an organist and master improviser, Franck was selected by the great organ builder Aristide Cavalier-Coll to inaugurate several instruments in Paris. Together, Franck and Cavalier-Coll revived organ music in France following the degeneration of organ culture that occurred after the French Revolution. That decline was certainly due to the instrument association with the church. The new symphonic sound of the organ made possible the new romantic aesthetic with which Franck is closely associated. In 1872, at long last, Franck was appointed as organ professor at the Paris Conservatoire and became an unofficial professor of composition, where he mentored and taught some of the very best young composers of the day. Later, he was a founding member of the Société Nationale de Musique, an important forum for new French music, and was elected its president in 1885. Today, Franck remains famous for just a small number of compositions written in his last years. Franck's music endures, but what is little known is his work as a song composer. Why don't we know Franck's songs? Are Franck's melodies inferior? To be sure, great composers have areas of weakness in their output, and there are good reasons to ignore them, but Franck's vocal writing simply doesn't fall under this category. Still, historically, Franck's songs have rarely been included in written discussions of the mélodie or in French song anthologies. As I see it, there are quite a number of reasons that Franck's reputation as a song composer didn't take off. One of the most understandable reasons for the delayed start of his composing career was, to put it simply, Franck lacked connections and had no real political savviness. Until joining the Paris Conservatoire faculty in 1872, at the late age of 50, he had little financial stability and taught endless hours just to support his family. At that time, he was just unable to give serious attention to his own composing. He showed limited creative output from 1848 to 1870, and for this reason might even be called a late bloomer. Then there was the Franco-Prussian War from 1870 to 1871 that interrupted Franck's life, and with it his creativity. Yet another factor was that as a devout Catholic, Franck was known for his seriousness as well as emotional and spiritual intensity. He rejected commercialism and had no desire to court the Parisian opera-loving public's favor. Another contributor is the limited number of his songs. Although Franck had a large output of keyboard compositions, he wrote only 18 mélodies and 6 vocal duets. And yet, despite all these reasons that Franck should have failed as a song composer, his songs still exist. Franck's romantic compositional style merges elements of the classical form typical of Mozart and Beethoven and fuses it with the tonal language as well as the structural and expressive innovations pioneered by Liszt and Wagner. Prominent song characteristics are strophic settings, one note per syllable setting, chordal accompaniments in block broken or arpeggiated figures, simple vocal lines, and increased density of harmonic texture, full of chromaticism as the composer. Franck maintained his steadfast commitment to emotionally genuine artistic expression and insistence that song compositions must be personal and meaningful. These commitments were later embodied in the philosophy of his forward control. In Franck's songs, we frequently find miniature form harmonic progressions that nod to the larger scale works for which Franck is most renowned. And of course, Franck's songs are enhanced by texts by such beloved and respected literary figures as Victor Hugo, Alfred de Musset, and Sully Prudhomme. But his text-setting ability and/or respect has sometimes been called into question. Franck focuses on the main messages of text in his songs and achieves his goals of finding overarching emotional content, lending us memorable melodies linked to tender and poignant stories. Franck's students became an important countercurrent in French art music and were sometimes called Franquistes. This 1885 painting by French artist Henri Fontaine-Latour features several Franquistes. Franck's students and followers included prominent composers of the late Romantic period. The Franck pupils displayed distinct individual styles, even though the students knew their music was not what the establishment wanted to hear. Franck's insistence on personal artistic integrity above all else encouraged the development of their unique voices. Franck's reputation continued to grow after his death, with his students advancing the cause of his music. They also generated greater public acceptance of his style. Franck's students and followers also became known by the name La Bande à Franck. Among the most prominent and historically important are Henri Duparc and Ernest Chausson, widely regarded as two of the very best mélodie composers. Franck's students also included Guillaume Lequeux, Louis Vierne, Paul Dukas, Éric Satie, Emmanuel Chabrier, and Vincent d'Indy. Franck's most notable and direct compositional influence on the later generation of Romantic composers was his chromatically adventurous harmonic writing that his students explored through his expansive tonal palette and use of the harmonic language that nods to Liszt and Wagner. Franck used these and added a French sense of refinement to his own music. Franck's songs are usually divided into 3 distinct style periods. In his early period, some songs showed daring chromatic progressions for the period. In the early songs, Franck chooses romantic themes. Poetically, early style songs are often delivered as narrative ballads. The pieces are reminiscent of the expressive and sentimental French romance. They are also evocative of German lieder, particularly those of Franz Schubert, who happened to be Franck's favorite composer. Franck often sets a simple melody over sparse diatonic accompaniment, and he also often shows little respect for textual rhythm. In general, the early songs are light experiences, offering simplicity of sound and demand for legato in the vocal line to contradict brisk and playful accompaniments. Next, I'll play an excerpt from the song Souvenance. Souvenance is an expressive, romantic piece modeled after the French Romance, and it is a folk text setting of Chateaubriand. The piece is in modified strophic form, strongly revealing the influence of Schubert. Graham Johnson notes that the, quote, niceties of literature were not as important to this composer as the overall poetic feeling of a text. Souvenance is in the style of a ballad, in which the narrator remembers and dreams of returning to my country. According to Fritz Nöske, an accompanying motif resembling Schubert's Gretchen am Spinnrade sustains a vocal part that begins in a hesitating way, but blossoms out to express the nostalgia of the narrator. Alterations between major and minor and use of different opening and closing keys are a peculiarity when compared with the poem. But when compared with the poem, the major-minor alterations seem slightly unbalanced. But the climax of the song, whatever the key, is emotionally touching. I'll play just a minute of it. Sorry, I have to keep going. Next, I'll talk about Franck's middle style period. The songs here take on more finely balanced forms. The pieces are emotionally direct, warm, and sincere. And in the middle period, Franck's melodic lines gain fluidity. In the middle period, the awkwardness of his accompaniments have mostly disappeared. The texts he chooses are ardent, and he pairs them with romantic melodies. The later songs in the middle period have more complicated harmony and richer sonority. Arguably, in the middle period, Franck also displays improved text setting. Late-style chromaticism appears gradually through this period and is fully present in the song Le Vase Brisé. With this period, Franck's style becomes much more transparent, and one might say, more French. In this period, Franck gives us the mélodie Le Mariage des Roses, with its simple gracefulness. The piece has been described as, quote, an emotionally winning little piece that is full of charm, freshness, and depth of emotion while retaining grace and elegance not always found in Franck's writing. The charming melodic opening moves into a more openly chromatic section at the end of each verse. The piece also displays a broadening of tempo and thickening of piano texture that rarely occurs in the work of other French composers of Franck's era. I'll play a verse of that one now.
Aïe, les baiser plus doux.
Next, I'll play my favorite piece from the end of Franck's middle style period. In 1879, Le Vase Brisé was Franck's first song composition in 6 years. The piece has elevated characteristics of what we consider to be the composer's style. Franck employs a grim triple-time minor key ostinato, which according to Franck's biographer, R.J. Stove, quote, derives its power from its very obsessiveness. Here, Franck's poetic sense went beyond the text of the verse to the wider themes and subject of the poem. This allowed him to write works of dramatic consequence despite any lack of attention he may have paid to verse structure. Le Vase Brisé has been much criticized for what is seen as the mismatch between the emotional music and the rather stiff words of Sully Prudhomme that caused Franck to stumble in trying to dramatize the poetry's warning, ne touchez pas. In the late style period, Franck delivers his most developed songs, both harmonically and musically. Although at this time he was composing primarily large-scale works and very few melodies. The pieces gain depth and harmonic lines are more ample. Increasingly, Franck displays rich, involved harmonies. Also, the songs demonstrate emotional authenticity. In this period, Franck gives the greatest attention yet to his text, resulting in improved text setting. I also want to point out that Franck does have some other sacred and liturgical works, and he composed 6 duos for female voices during this period. La Procession and Nocturne are 2 late-style songs that are widely regarded as Franck's best melodies. Today, I have chosen to offer you an excerpt of Nocturne that has a clear, formal structure following the stanza of poetry. This song demonstrates once again the qualities of emotional authenticity and individuality that were hallmarks of Franck's playing. The opening to Nocturne looks and sounds somewhat like the organ improvisation. As you look at the first major chords, please notice the circling chromaticism that occurs verse by verse and eventually turns to the key. Arrives at a major, broader arpeggiated and the piano. The voice rides the full accompaniment with elevating effect, and as a point of interest, this melody was eventually scored with the piano, voice, and orchestra by Guy Reichardt of Franck. In closing, I'd like to leave you with a list of my favorite Franck melodies. Without a doubt, Franck was a musical genius whose organ, and according to Graham Johnson, other, quote, contributions to and experiments with chromatic harmony and cyclical form, combined with aesthetic, which was anchored in an all-pervading religious faith, were an antidote to the simplistic musical fripperies of the Second Empire and worked as a powerful influence to add a new dimension to what was understood by the term French music. Franck emerged as a counterbalance to France's opera fanaticism, composing in his own style and remaining true to himself by refusing to give in to the demands of popular culture. His songs are a beautiful and important part of the history of the Mélodie. He mentored and in turn received from the next generation of French composers, becoming known as Père Franck and Pater Seraphicus. At Franck's funeral, Emmanuel Chabrier credited Franck's tutelage for creating a generation of robust, true-believing, and thoughtful musicians. Go. I cannot click. There we go. If you guys would like to explore the songs of Louise Reichardt or César Franck further, please email me. I'll happily share scores, recordings, or translations. And I've also sent Dr. Brown a link for the playlist. There are also commercial recordings available through Amazon.com and MSRCD.com. Thank you all so much for your attention and this whirlwind presentation. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my research. Also, again, thank you to Dr. Brown for hosting my talk today, and to Drew Montague and Thomas Kientz, who were my collaborative partners and pianists for these recordings. I really appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy.
You are welcome. That was like the fastest presentation ever. Sorry, guys.
No, that was great. I'm amazed at how you were able to get through all of that. And you've certainly whetted our appetite for these fantastic composers, and also introducing really one of the founding fathers, as you pointed out, of French Mélodie, since we're going to be going into that next in our study of song. And I'm certainly really anxious to look at the Reichardt songs, particularly the Metastasio songs. That's fantastic. I really enjoyed that. That tantalizing taste of that of the Fra un dolce delirio. I was like, ooh, I really want. I must hear more of that. So
you know, that song in particular is included. There's a 2015 or 16 music by women, or the 24 Italian songs by women. And I'm like, cross that out, please. They're just composed composers, you know.
Yeah, right.
I believe that one is included in that anthology. But if you're looking for those songs, I have scores. I found one of the great anthologies that came out in the 1980s by a lady named Nancy Reich. I found on eBay, so I have like a huge volume of Louise Reichardt songs, and there are a few that are available on IMSLP too.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was wondering maybe Glendower would have some of this stuff too.
He probably does.
Yeah.
When I was trying to find them, I used interlibrary loan, which if you all don't already use that, it's free, and you know I use it for everything. I mean, I just borrow from every library. You know, it's a great resource.
Absolutely. Do y'all have any questions for Amy? I know we're pretty much out of time here, but I
went so long.
No. It's great. It's great. It was a wonderful amount of information, and I'll also share with everyone the SoundCloud list you sent to me as well.
Oh, great! Awesome.
Yeah. Great. Beautiful music. Well, thank you all for being with us today. I know Amy has a heart out as well. She has teaching to do today, so like we all do. Viva la Zoom. So anyway, thank you all for being with us. And remember, vocal seminar tonight, 6 p.m. Hope to see some of you there, and we'll have a Zoom link for that as well. And thank you, Amy. Have a great day in New Orleans. I hope you're all having some nice weather this time of year, I'm sure.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's 80 degrees today, though.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, it's only my hair is getting bigger from the humidity.
Embrace it. You live in the South. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.